Aloha! Welcome back to the Anxiety Coaches Podcast. I'm your host and coach, Gina Ryan, and I'm so happy to be with you again today as we consider the many ways to bring your mind and body back to its natural peace and calm. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about why anxiety isn't the enemy and how we can actually reframe anxiety and talk about our nervous system's intelligence. We have fear for a reason. We can feel fear for a reason. We get anxious feelings for a reason. And you know, if you've been listening to the show for any length of time, when we talk about anxiety here, we are talking about unrelenting anxiety, living with it day in, day out, without a break, living what I call down the wormhole. And that is a problem. But the anxiety and fear and those feelings are not the problem, and it's not the enemy. And when we can reframe some of these things, it makes it easier for people. Many people come about changing their anxiety into more peace and calm from many different directions. So today, I want to talk about a gentleman that I heard on a podcast recently. His name is Johnny Miller, and the podcast was about grief. And I found his approach spot on when he was talking about grief and sharing his story. So I thought I would share his wisdom and understanding of the nervous system with you. It's another way that we can reframe it because, like I said, we all come about to make the changes in different ways. So hopefully this will be very helpful to many of you. And what made some of Johnny Miller's work stand out was it was not just about mindset. He incorporates the body. And I know that you are probably tired of me talking about the body and how we have to actually manually release our muscles, and that is a message to our mind, to our brain, that things are okay. So I was very intrigued that he was talking about grief and bringing in the body. He talks about not just calming your thoughts, but teaching your nervous system to feel safe, to process emotion, and to return to balance. And I felt like he should have been on the show the way he was speaking. And maybe we will have him on one day. But his message that I was listening to was about grief, but it very much translates into what we are talking about here. In these next couple of episodes, I want to explore how anxiety isn't just something to get rid of, but something to listen to. We'll talk about how to use the body and not the mind only to calm yourself, how grief, anger, and awe can all become doorways to deep inner peace. Whether you're brand new to somatic tools or already exploring nervous system healing, these next few episodes are going to be helpful to you and remind you that you are not broken, that your body is wise, and calm is a skill that you can practice. So if you'd like to learn more about Johnny's work and what he is doing out in the world, you can head over to nervoussystemmastery.com for more from him. I think you would enjoy his way of dealing with grief and other nervous system issues. So let's begin this journey together here with some gentleness, with curiosity. Keep your mind open, and with trust in the body's ability to heal. You know, pretty often we treat anxiety like it's a problem, worse than a problem, like it's the enemy, correct? And I liked that Johnny Miller described anxiety not as an emotion, but as a protective strategy. So it's your nervous system's way of shielding you from something it perceives as unsafe. And this is what we are striving for here, is to get that message into ourselves that we are safe. And the body is a vehicle to do that, as is the mind. But often we think, because we are normally thinking thoughts that we don't want to be thinking or that are bothersome to us, that the mind is the only way to come about this. But it is not. It is the body that can take us into teaching our whole mind and body that there is safety and that we are safe. So we could think of anxiety or fears as like the smoke alarm. The alarm itself is not the fire, but it is the alert that there's fire somewhere. Maybe you can't see it. Just like with our anxiety, we may not be able to pinpoint why it is there. Is it from the past? Is it from something that's happening right now? And that's why I want you to also know that you don't need to have that solved in order to find more peace and calm. You can do that, and it is a wonderful thing and well worth your time and effort to do, should you choose to find the roots of your anxious self. But the anxiety is the alert, and it can go off when there's real danger. And sometimes it goes off when you have burnt toast. Anxiety is just like that. It's an alarm. We could have a big fire in the basement and the fire alarm goes off, or we could have just burned the toast for breakfast and the smoke alarm goes off. And anxiety is that alarm. It is telling us something. And I've seen this in my own life and with clients, where anxiety masks the deeper emotions, like it's sadness or grief. And the nervous system chooses anxiety because it actually feels more manageable than feeling vulnerable or overwhelmed. And like I said, I listened to a podcast about grief, and that can also be very difficult for us to grapple with. And so we will turn instead to the alarm, to the anxiety, and go with that because it feels more doable, something that we can actually deal with more easily. Some of us don't want to go near sadness, and certainly grief is not often welcomed. But our nervous system is wired for protection, not perfection. Its job isn't to make us happy, it's to keep us alive. So when it senses a threat, even a subtle one, even one that is from our thinking, not in our physical world, it will activate responses like fight, flight, or freeze. And this can happen in everyday moments. It can happen with big stuff, or it can happen with small stuff, getting a critical email, walking into a crowded room or on a stage to speak, or even facing a long to-do list. But here's the hopeful part that I really want you to get. Your nervous system isn't stuck. It wants to return to balance over and over and over again. And it's always looking for cues of safety and connection in order to return to that balance. That's why we can come at this from either our minds or our bodies, our thinking or our physical being, to get those cues of safety going. When we suppress emotions instead of actually feeling them, we start to accumulate what Johnny Miller calls emotional debt And I really liked that phrase he used, emotional debt. These unfelt emotions don't just disappear. Like I've said in the past, they are stored in us, in our subconscious. They linger. They show up in side ways, such as chronic tension, looping thoughts, and our favorite here, anxiety. The more we resist feeling, the more intense that emotional pressure becomes. It doesn't go away. It gets louder. And I know we've talked about this many times, how people will talk to me about having anxiety and how it came out of the blue. Well, this is a perfect example of how it didn't come out of the blue. Like I have always said, it may be bubbling up because you were reminded of something that is buried deep in your subconscious. This is what he is calling emotional debt. Those emotions don't disappear, they are lingering. And they show up and they come out when you least expect it or want it. So the more we resist feeling, the more intense that emotional pressure can become. And it takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of mental work to keep all of that down. It's like keeping that beach ball underwater. It takes a lot of effort, and it's slippery and it pops up when you least expect it. We don't need to resist these feelings. They are uncomfortable and they may be intense, but they become easier to deal with when we allow them. And we don't have to use all of our effort to keep them pushed down and out of our way. There are 3 foundational skills that Johnny Miller outlined to help us to build some resilience in dealing with this and dealing with these feelings that can come that we are actively avoiding, but we don't need to. The first one is interoception, and that's becoming aware of internal sensations. This is paying attention to the tension in the body, the butterflies in the belly, the tightness in the chest. The second one is self-regulation, actively learning to calm ourselves using our breath, using our posture, and I have episodes about posture, or grounding. We have many episodes about grounding and the breath. This is our way of working with ourselves to get the message of more safety being available to us, self-regulation. And the third one that he talks about is called emotional fluidity. And this one is allowing the emotions to actually move through us rather than clinging to them or avoiding them. These skills aren't about perfection, but they are practices, and they are about giving your body what it needs to feel safe again. So remember, that first one we may not have talked about a lot here using this word, but it's interoception, and that is understanding and feeling and being with the internal sensations. And everybody has different ones, but tension, tightness, and butterflies, those are very common ones. And remember the self-regulation, using our breath, our posture, and our grounding, using these things, our body, obviously, using that body to begin to calm ourselves on purpose, sending that message that all is well. And finally, again, that emotional fluidity, allowing the emotions to move through us rather than grabbing a hold of them and making it worse by adding more fear thoughts to them or completely avoiding them and trying to keep them underwater like that beach ball. It doesn't work. It's exhausting, and they do pop up anyway. So here's a little practice I thought we could just leave you with before we get to the next episode, where I'll get into more of uncovering the skills and ways that we can use the body in order to bring about that message of calm and that we are safe. So let's just try a little mini practice here. Take a few seconds together. Place your feet on the ground and inhale through your nose for a count of 4. And then exhale slowly for a count of 6. And let your shoulders drop. Try it again. It's simple, so I think you're probably not going to do it because it's simple. But it is a way to send the message that you are okay. So one more time. Inhale for a count of 4 and exhale for a count of 6. And let your exhale always be a little bit longer, as it is 6 from the 4, and that little bit slower. This really helps to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. And if we don't do it, it can't help. So even though it's simple, I want you to give it a try. And now in our next episode, I want to explore how we regulate from the bottom up. A lot of therapy and a lot of tools that are out there are top down. But as not only Johnny Miller, but other people that I have actually studied and worked with have the idea of starting from the bottom up, and that is using the body, how to use the body to change your brain instead of the other way around. So I look forward to seeing you there. And until then, here's a simple journal prompt that you can work with until we come back together with the next podcast. What might my anxiety be protecting me from? I want you to write about that, write freely, and see what comes up. I think you might be amazed. Thanks for being here with me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. I'll be back in a few more days with another podcast. Until then, be well and aloha.